The way humans have interacted with machines has always been us trying to translate our brains into something the robot can understand. But the most natural way for us to convey our thoughts is language. And I would argue until about a year and a half ago, the natural language processing was not up to snuff to do this kind of job. And it very much is now. So what you can do, right, is from that natural language, you can do a couple iterations and you can come up with a mission plan that can then be executed by the robot in seconds. And this world was unthinkable a year and a half ago, but now it exists.
You're listening to the Drone Radio Show podcast, the show about drones and the people who use them for business, fun, and research. Hosted by Randy Goers.
Hello, everyone. This is Randy Goers, and welcome to the Drone Radio Show podcast, episode 410. Will we soon be able to talk to our drones via text? For that question, we head to Chicago to speak with Vic Pellicano, CEO and founder of Avianna, a software company working to bridge the gap between hardware and software excellence in the robotics industry. Avianna offers a suite of products that utilize artificial intelligence to enable drones and other robots to understand human language and operate autonomously. Their software enhances mission execution and simplifies data analysis and reporting. Imagine being able to command your drones or check on the status of your fleet using simple commands in English, such as find a missing person or which drones are scheduled for missions today. Vic is a successful entrepreneur in the software industry. Prior to starting Avianna, in 2012 he launched Verenia, an e-commerce software company. After a decade of growth, Verenia was acquired by Oracle in 2022. With an interest in robotics, Vic turned his attention to making interaction of humans and robots more seamless and intuitive. He launched Avianna in early 2023 with the aim of helping UAS manufacturers make more responsive and intelligent unmanned vehicles. In this edition of the Drone Radio Show, Vic talks about Avianna, its suite of AI-powered solutions, and how AI is revolutionizing the role robots will play in our lives. But before we hear from Vic, I want to stress that your support is the heartbeat of my podcast. Every episode is crafted with you in mind, and your generous donations ensure I can keep delivering the content you love. Whether it's the price of a coffee or a more substantial contribution, every bit helps to defray the cost of production. Donate today and be a vital part of the podcast's continued journey to greatness. And for a limited time, donate $100 or more and receive an official Drone Radio Show coffee mug. To donate, go to droneradioshow.com/donate. And if you can, please subscribe to the podcast on your favorite platform and leave a nice review and rating on iTunes. It really helps improve the podcast ranking among the many thousands of active podcasts today. So let's learn how AI-powered solutions are changing the way we interact with unmanned vehicles with Vic Pellicano of Avianna. Let's pick up the interview where I asked Vic to introduce himself.
My name is Vic Pellicano, and I'm founder and CEO of Avianna and Seraph AI companies.
Vic, tell us about Avianna. What does the company do?
The mission of Avianna is very, very simple, but complicated at the same time, right? The mission is to take what is very smart and innovative in this world, and that's AI tools that you see coming online minute by minute, and now drama by drama, by the way, but certainly a lot of tools being available daily and making them available in a commercial way, easy to use way for robotics companies and people making robots for various things.
As you mentioned, there are several different products and companies featuring AI. What differentiates Avianna from other AI companies?
That's an interesting question, right? The first, I would say, from a technology standpoint is we've been putting this together and we've proved it all out over the course of the last year, right? Which in this weird space makes us one of the older ones. But I'd also say there's only a handful of people solving it in a general sense. A lot of these tend to be verticalized proprietary solutions, which we don't believe you can really create the same kind of system. Just like enterprise software systems like ERP and stuff exist in a generic sense so companies can make use of them in their overall operations, we see AI tools being used much the same way over the years. That the extraction makes sense because a firm like ours can sit and focus on making it better, more accessible, maintain it. And the people who are making robots can be very good at serving their market functions and improving the robots and all the other software, by the way, that isn't AI on the robots, that's special about how they move and things like that. And let us focus on these core concepts using the most stable models of everything, putting in tools faster, things like that, that's going to give them, make them more nimble and able to serve their markets better.
When we talk about AI-enabled autonomous drones, what does that actually mean to a drone operator?
I think it's a drone that's given a mission and that can accomplish its mission, can set out an initial plan, right? A mission plan. It can execute that mission autonomously. And importantly, it can also make changes based on the data received during the mission. So, I think like every autonomous person you can tell, like, go into the kitchen, but if you go that way and the door's closed, you don't just crash into the wall and you don't just turn around and come home, right? It's that kind of decision making to still accomplish the mission in another way that makes it fully autonomous. I would argue that it can find multiple ways to solve the problem, find the most efficient one, and still solve it.
Is the drone making decisions purely on the information it gathers from the environment, or does it also receive information from other sources as well?
It could be both, right? It has to respond to its environment. Otherwise, I think it's a useless autonomous vehicle. Obstacle avoidance, crash avoidance, all that kind of stuff is super important. But also, you're going to want the ability to cancel a mission. And importantly, one of the things we're working on now with Avianna is called Swarm AI. And it's the ability for the robots to talk to each other in a human understandable way and talk to each other about how the mission objectives have been achieved. So a good example of this would be like search and rescue missions, right? And this is a very straightforward and important use case that exists in real life. You see what's going on in Gaza and what's happened in Ukraine the last couple of years. And, searching for people is important because we're important. And it's really hard to find a bunch of drone pilots and drones and then coordinate all of them to do different search areas, right? Better to get the machines out there and tell them there's a person out here. We need to find them. Or we think there may be people out here. Can you find them? A kid goes missing in the woods, whatever. Well, how stupid would it be if you did that and one of the drones found it and the rest of them continued on until their battery's drained, right? So they got to be able not only to communicate with their environment and with the pilot, but they also have to be able to communicate with each other.
From the website, I found it interesting that with the Avianna software, users can communicate with the drone via text. So, using the search and rescue mission as an example, an operator could just send a message to the drone to look for people in a specific area. Is that the essence of its capabilities?
Absolutely. So that's the whole point of it, right? Is the way humans have interacted with machines for the last, however long there's been machines has always been us trying to translate our brains into something the robot can understand, right? Controllers and different things. These are just ways to convey our thoughts. But the most natural way for us to convey our thoughts is language. And I would argue until about a year and a half ago, the natural language processing was not up to snuff to do this kind of job, and it very much is now. So what you can do, right, is from that natural language, you can do a couple iterations, and you can come up with a mission plan that can then be executed by the robot in seconds. And this world was unthinkable a year and a half ago, but now it exists, right? And every robot company, every autonomous vehicle company, every drone company is trying to figure out how to put this into their robots, but it is a non-trivial thing. I mean, a lot of these guys are super smart that run these drone businesses. You probably know this, but this is its own specialized thing. And these guys have enough trouble with regulations and everything else. They just want to get to market. They want to help people. And we can help them do that, right? By helping them get from 0 to 10 in enabling their robotics with AI, instead of having to hire all these really expensive software engineers working with these language models, vision models, et cetera. They can just use Avianna as a toolkit to accomplish their goal of having autonomous drones do jobs faster.
Is the software primarily built around natural language processing, or is that more of a subcomponent?
It's a component. I wouldn't say it's the main feature of it, right? I think that's where the world goes, is to natural language processing. I think the way we used to deal with stuff is going to move this way. I think you saw the start of that in 2017 with Google Assistant and Alexa and all that kind of stuff that came out. And I think that just continues, right? And it's very natural to talk to these things anyway. I mean, I threw out my Roomba, but before I did, I would yell at it regularly because I expected it. There's something about having a machine next to you that you expect it to understand you, and we can make that real. So, but it's a component, right? We have 3 main features of the system we call Fleet AI, which is huge in its own right. I'll get into that in a second. Mission AI and Vision AI. And these all have very different purposes, and they can be used on their own, which is why we offer them as different products and don't just push them as the whole system. And they can be used independently. But the same thing, natural language kind of thing, extends to like Fleet AI, where you can analyze your robot's data, the entire fleet's worth of data, all at once by just asking questions. How many drones were by Chicago yesterday at 3 p.m., right? What does my current fleet look like on a map? And it'll produce the map. What can you send me the telemetry data from, Nighthawk 4 or whatever your drone's name is, Typhoon, right? Whatever cool name you come up with. You could just ask those questions and get answers like that instead of sifting through logs or reports or anything else. This is a very complicated thing to do, by the way, to deal with these private data stores. You can go ask, an AI model, an LLM, BARD, or whatever, any kind of questions you want, and get an answer, but not if it's not trained on the data. And this data is being genned in real time by these robots. So Fleet AI is a very important component of that.
So the system can respond to questions like what drones in the fleet need attention, which ones haven't been serviced in a while, all the things that a manager would want to know about the status of their fleet.
Yeah, it can do that. It can tell you what the exact bill of materials for that thing is. If it's been having trouble, it can even report that out. Like, it can send emails or send it in the chat. You probably want an email because I got enough problems dealing with all the messages in my inbox. I don't know if I need them from my devices too. But if that's an operations manager, maybe that makes sense, right? And depending, right, if it's a military use case or a defense use case, that may come in real handy. But I personally don't want my Roomba talking to me. Like that thing, it can barely clean the floor.
Before we move on to the other 2 components, is there anything else about Fleet AI that we should know?
Just that it's a really complicated thing. I think the founders have what's called the curse of knowledge. The founders and CEOs of these drone companies is they know too much and they're too smart and they're trying to build everything themselves. And I would just say it's a non-trivial affair to deal with machines producing gigabytes of data a day, and how to actively work with AI on those things is not easy. And they don't need to get lost doing that and there's a whole suite of tools, BI tools, et cetera, that they'll have to install to deal with it. There's a better way.
Another Avianna capability is called Mission AI. What does that entail?
So the first thing is deciding your intent, right? Like, what are you intending by this question? Because you don't have to flip modes in it. So, it decides you're trying to do a mission, and it can actually find the available robot in the fleet that meets it. So if you have drones, some of them are capable of painting, some are capable of heavy lifting. Pretend you have a massive fleet of drones, right? And you want to give a clear instruction, like go paint that building next door blue. It can actually look through the drones in its inventory. It can find out which ones have equipment to lend itself to painting, which ones are nearby, and then give you options from just those and say, all right, here's the mission, pick a drone to execute it. And then it'll go through all its checks, make sure it has what it needs, and then dream up a mission plan in real time from you not telling it anything other than what I just said. Develop, write out the whole mission plan, send it to you to confirm as the pilot, and you'd say, yeah, that's the one, that's the plan, yes. And then it would take off and do the mission, whatever the mission is. And it would adjust the mission and confirm with you as it goes along if it needs to make changes.
How does it develop the mission plan? For example, if I want to inspect a building, Can the system develop the mission plan totally on its own? Or does it need to be trained first, and how to do it?
I'll say it probably needs to be guided in those cases, but it doesn't need to be trained. These are like very specific words in the AI industry. I think where you want to give it some kind of outline for how you do it, right? Because maybe your company does it in a certain way. Like everybody doesn't survey the same way, everybody doesn't do things the same way. Otherwise, we'd live in a monotonous society, right? So I think guiding it to your way of doing things up front and doing a little elbow work that way would be important. But it could do what it thinks is inspecting. Now, what if that's what you think of inspecting is a different story? So we'd want to partner together on that to make sure that the way you see the missions is what comes out of it, and make sure we're guiding it to do it that way.
Yeah, and realistically, most companies have some sort of standard procedure that can be used as the framework for the AI.
You got it.
And the third service is called Vision AI.
Correct. Yeah. So that's its understanding of the world that it's seeing. And it's very interesting how far this technology has come, right? But if I showed you a demo, right, you could pull up a live video, even this webcam, and it would be analyzing and doing live boxing and analysis of what it's seeing. And this is going to sound creepier than I wanted to. I got to find another way to put it. But it has an inner monologue with its mission planner based on the vision, right? So it's taking in the visual data, distances, all that kind of stuff. And it's saying like, is this screwing up my mission? Do I need to change anything? Is this the thing I'm looking for if it's on a search mission, right? Is this a house? Because you told me to inspect the house, so I have to find that. So to do the mission, it has to be able to see, and to be able to see, it needs Vision AI. That said, what's interesting about Vision AI, right, is you're actually, when you drive any kind of autonomous vehicle, you're collecting all this data, and a lot of it gets thrown out because it's garbage. But actually it's not, because that's the only place, that might be the only place that data exists, is on this robot, right? And I think we've learned that all data is valuable, especially the visual stuff. So, that data can get logged, tagged, recorded for you as a company for whatever reason it might come up later. And you can ask it later. You can ask the robot, the drone in this case, hey, while you were out there painting the house, did you notice any cracks on the roof? And it flew over the roof. And maybe it didn't look that thoroughly, right? But it flew over it, and it can say like, yeah, you know what I did? I saw whatever, blah, blah, blah. I can do that because it has all the visual data from Vision AI annotated in a log next to the telemetry data and everything else.
So it could look back, just like a videotape, and answer questions by reevaluating the data.
Correct.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Now, there are probably a whole host of uses for the services, but what industries or use cases are you targeting?
I think for us, cleaning, search and rescue, and defense are the top three that make a lot of sense. I think where it makes the most sense, this kind of tech, is open world scenarios with dynamic environments and missions that are not easily discerned whether they're completed. I don't know if I had the best wording there, but like, if it's as simple as, you could imagine in a scenario where you have like a cargo type drone that's carrying hundreds of pounds from X spot to Y spot, you probably don't need that much AI because it's kind of in the ballpark of where it needs to be. They probably have big landing fields here to there, right? Like, and the thing can run on a schedule. They can just push a button and say, go to the other location, go to the other location. Like, that's pretty straightforward stuff. But where you have dynamic environments is really where you need AI, right? Because the robots of old were so stupid because they needed like the box to be the same shape at the same height on the conveyor belt, or everything fell apart, right? And the new era of robots that Avianna and the new robotics companies will bring is where we don't have to normalize the world for the robot. The robot has to be able to deal with the world the way it is.
Yeah, I could see where one of the clear uses would be in the military arena, particularly in battlefield operations, where things are constantly evolving and ongoing situational analysis is critical. And having a drone that can survey and at the same time avoid what's happening in the field would be a pretty valuable asset, I would think.
I would say so, and I think they might agree with you. We are working on some stuff with the federal government. I can't say exactly what, but they're pretty excited about the technology. And frankly, there's some really scientific stuff that we're working on with them that I think is going to add dimensions that it can't even imagine existing today to this world of robotics. That's going to be really, really useful in every commercial and military type scenario you can think of. So we're just scratching the surface of this stuff. It's brand new, it's exciting, and it has a long way to go, but it's going to be a much better world when we're able to deal with these machines in the ways that we'll be able to in the future.
What's the hardware or software requirements for using Avianna?
We're going to work backwards from the mission. So we're not going to tell you this is the sensor suite you need to use and this is the, amount of this you need to have and stuff like that. We're going to say, what's your commercial application? How do we service it? And then we're going to work backwards into what you need to do, right? And we're going to try to find the lowest common denominator of stuff. This is an expensive thing, the hardware and stuff like that. And we know going to market with a drone it's very hard. And so we get all that. And we appreciate it. We appreciate the cost sensitivity and everything else. So we're going to work backwards with every customer that comes along and say, what are we trying to accomplish? How do we partner on that? And you guys do that kind of work, and we'll set up the AI system for you to be able to do its part. We'll partner with you along the way to launch it, but by no means will we dictate terms to you. We are in a partnership with these companies. We understand that, and we understand a lot of them aren't in the best financial position at the moment because, frankly, because of the regulations. And we're not going to overburden them with cost to buy some expensive sensors to make this easier. We're going to try to find the most affordable way to build the best machine possible to do the job that needs doing.
Do you work at the manufacturer level or directly with the users?
Well, I hope the manufacturer is working with the users, so not the user level. The fact is, this stuff has to all get set up kind of custom with these companies. So it's best not to try to customize for everybody on the street. It's better to try to customize with somebody who has a repeatable commercial robot and or drone that serves a specific use case so that we can build a model together that's AI enabled that can go to market effectively instead of spending, time developing for a one-off use case.
What have been the key challenges in building an AI-enabled drone?
The technical talent is very hard to come by. I've been in the technology world now for 15 years, and I think there's a lot of brilliant technologists all over the world that I've had the blessing of working with, but the robotics space is so specialized that finding the people to build the stuff is really hard to do. And when you get them, you have to just hug and cherish them forever because they're so hard to find. And I'd say that's pretty unique in tech because a lot of times the parts are interchangeable on different sides of the equation. It's become that way over the years. And with this, if you've got a really brilliant, drone engineer or, aerodynamics guy and stuff like that, those people are so hard to come by and they're so specialized. And that's rare, I would say, in the technology world to have people's expertise be that rare. So we really appreciate those people out there that do all that stuff. And I hope there's a million more of them in a couple of years because we're going to need them.
Does Avianna have clients or drones that are already in use? Or are you still looking for partners?
We have one major partner we haven't formally announced yet. Maybe before the end of the year, we'll see. We're talking to other people always. It is kind of a case-by-case basis, right? It's a lot of these guys already went live with non-AI tools, and they're serving that market. But we all know how limited the market is right now by the regulatory environment. So as they're stumbling on use cases where AI makes sense, they're reaching out, and we're furthering those dialogues and talking about putting them into production.
Is AI limited by regulatory hurdles, or can it flourish within the current requirements?
I think it can flourish in the current requirements, but I think the current requirements are going to be the past requirements very soon. I'll say this. I think everybody should listen to everybody else's opinion on this stuff, and it should be a conversation with everybody involved, right? Safety should be the number one concern, but also you don't want to handcuff yourself to get behind in this race, because it's a dangerous game, right? So they have to find a way as they work on the regulations and the safety stuff to make sure that they're allowing the free market to operate and grow, because we're already having issues, falling behind in some areas of technology, semiconductors and stuff like that. You don't want to fall behind in building robots because I think that's a much bigger gulf that will be harder to dig yourself out of later.
I want to talk about the company and its evolution. But before that, is there anything about the technology that we should cover?
I'll just go a little deeper on that question about regulations and safety and stuff. I think I do acknowledge the reality that this is scary stuff for a lot of people, for a regular person. An autonomous vehicle, it even sounds kind of spooky. But you got to remember, I think all through human history, we have needed a class of humans to work for us cheaper than we cost ourselves to live the lifestyle we want to live. It's just a fact. I'm not like a Marxist or a classist or a techno-capitalist or whatever label you want to put on. It's just a fact, right? Like all the culture war stuff about this, the labor, this and that is because to have your phone requires some pretty horrible things to happen in the world. That's just a fact. And I think robots and Avianna and companies working on this are the solution. I think they can free human beings from needing a class of people to work jobs that we don't want to work at wages we don't want to work for. They can provide that kind of labor force for us in the future. I believe that in my heart, that it can relieve human beings of this burden that it's had its entire existence since we've been humans. That said, I acknowledge that it's a terrifying thought and that these foundational models and AI needs to be handled really, really carefully. And safety has to be a primary concern. And every company should comply and pay attention to what's going on in the regulatory world and do their best to do it. But again, without falling behind of other people working on it, because that I think is a bigger danger.
So moving to the company, why did you start Avianna?
I give you a little background on me. I don't want to go too far into the history books, but I was a son of a truck driver. My mom got her GED. My dad left in like sixth grade. By the time I graduated high school, I was the most educated person. And my parents died when I was young. I was homeless for a little bit. I got a job at a manufacturing company. I started a software company called Verenia that I ran for about a decade, that I bootstrapped all that time, and I sold to Oracle last January. And changed my life, right? And it was a great outcome for everybody involved, me included. But all of a sudden, I had a lot of time on my hands. And I told my wife, I said, if I go back to work, because we can get by on very little, right? I still drive a Kia and I'm still wearing clothes I bought 3 years ago. Like, I don't need a lot in this world. I said, I want to do something big. Like, I want to work on stuff in this world that's going to move the world, right? Because now I don't need money. Now I want to leave the world better than I found it. And I think Avianna provides that opportunity. How I came up with Avianna itself was because I keep complaining about Roombas, because this was a real problem for me. My Roomba dragged, I can't say the bad word, but my dog had an accident on the floor. And one morning I woke up to find that it turned into a calamity. It went from an accident to a calamity overnight, thanks to my Roomba. And at this point, right, I'm working with the new AI tools just as an outsider, just looking at them. And I was like, how is this thing so smart? This text box I can prompt with any question and get an answer. And my Roomba just dragged this all over my house. Like, it seems like they should talk to each other, right? So, and I had some investments in the robot space because I was trying to build a portfolio for my kids, honestly, because I think 20, 40 years from now, robots are going to be everywhere. So I'm trying to lay some initial groundwork from my family's perspective. And I love robots. Who doesn't love robots? But when I realized that the commercial space here was like, there weren't a lot of big players just focused on this, outside of at a vertical level where they were also making the robots, I thought we can tease that out and we can make this a commercial system for everybody, so that all these kids in college and in high school right now that are doing robotics programs and doing amazing things, so that they don't all have to also be AI engineers, was a powerful thing. So that's why we decided to found Avionics. I want to give everybody that toolkit. So as they come up with these brilliant robots over the next 20 years, they have a place to go to get software for it to make it behave the way it should.
So it's fair to say that the initial idea was to make it easier to communicate with robots using text-enabled devices.
That's exactly what it was, right? We were trying to make, I wanted to be able to not do the thing that the Roomba did to me. And then but that involves mission planning. So when you found a business, you get into some problem and you start looking around and you'll be like, nobody's solving this. And then the wider and wider you look around, it kind of grows around you. And if you listen to the market and you pay attention, you listen to the problem set and your employees and potential partners, you learn a lot about what everybody needs and you kind of pack it together and then you call that business at the end of the day.
Speaking of the AI market, it is really dynamic and seems to be constantly evolving. How is Avianna positioned to grow with this changing market?
I think the great thing about where we're positioned, and this goes for Avianna and Seraph, is we're not trying to be a foundational model company. And that's where most of the science work is being done at this point. I'm doing what I've done my whole career is I'm making software for companies, and I'm not making them for deep scientists, and I'm not making them for consumers. I'm making them for companies. And making software for companies is drastically different than either of those things because it's not just the best tech. It's taking a look at all the best tech, integrating the pieces that make the most sense, and then helping the businesses through the change management and partnering with them along the way to adopt the technology is just as important. And nobody can do all these things. That's why there's B2C companies and B2B companies because they're serviced differently and stuff like that. So I would say Avianna is well positioned in that, right? Like, being able to partner with these companies, help them adopt these tools, grow their offerings, truly be a partner that somebody can get a hold of right now and say like, hey, Vic, I'm working on this new project. Can we talk about it? Like, we'd love to use Avianna for it. Like, we'd have that conversation today, right? And I think that's the kind of partnership that we can develop and that the bigger companies won't be able to, and the foundational companies won't care to because they just want to put out a service and have people consume it and pay for it like electricity or water. And everything has to exist and everything has its benefit, but I think Avianna is uniquely positioned to do this job.
What's your history with robotics?
I don't have a history with robotics except for being just fascinated by them. I learned all the stuff I know about robotics since my Oracle acquisition. My last company was a manufacturing company, so I do know manufacturing really well. We had a couple hundred customers around the world that were manufacturers of all kinds of things, boats, cars, glass, metal houses, everything you could imagine, cylinders. We dealt with a lot of manufacturing, so I know how all that stuff works. Oh, and we had a couple of robotics companies as customers, actually. It was a CPQ company, but I can't say that I knew anything about robots. That was all in the last year and a half during my investment stage when I was doing some of these early investments into these companies.
What has the last year and a half taught you about the drone industry?
I understand the need for regulations. I understand the cautious approach. I just hate seeing motivated, brilliant people held back from serving the world and making the world better. And I hate the idea that there's guys out there right now doing a job with a hammer that's going to have back problems and, chronic illnesses and arthritis and everything else from doing these jobs that we probably have robots do. And I think we're demeaning people to a lifetime of hard labor when we could be free from that. If we just let some of this out, I think, the era of protectionism of keeping the robots out of people's jobs will have to come to an end at some point, and it's got to get loosened up. So I would say, sorry, I may have overtalked it a little bit, but I hate to see it. I come from a family of working class people, and I've seen them in their old age, and it's not a pleasant thing. And I hope someday that somebody sees their way to not seeing the short-term problems of job displacement in an industry or two and sees their way to the long-term benefit of being able to hold a glass of water in your hands when you're 60.
Tell us about the launch of the company and how starting Avianna compares to your former company.
We were founded in about May. So about 6 months old, and we're a startup, and it's different, right? It's amazing how much changes in the 10 years since I started the last one. Avianna is unique because it has a niche market segment, a very important market segment, but a niche market segment. So it's not a traditional startup where you have to build this kind of go-to-market machine. It's more deliberate in its approach of who we talk to, how we talk to them, what we talk about. And that makes it a little bit easier in some respects. But the amount of engineering talent and the diversity of engineering talent, and frankly, the lack of such talent outside of certain things has been hard. So from a startup perspective, it's been a lot harder to source the right people and get them working here and productive and building the team. It probably took me twice as long as it would have in another industry. But outside of that, like it's exhilarating to feel like you're producing again something for the world, like that it needs, that you feel like it needs, that's going to make the world better. That's the kind of stuff that gets you out of bed every day. Just frankly, and I can tell you from experience, just having a lot of money doesn't do that. What gets you out of bed every day is thinking, this world's better because I got up today.
What advice would you give to other entrepreneurs?
Whatever it is, just do it. Just do it right now. Like and I'm not a Nike commercial, but just do the thing. Like you want to make this big change, do it. You want to do this, just do it. Like the analysis paralysis stops. It has to stop. Nobody knows what they're doing. Nobody has a better answer than you. Just do the thing. You'll learn. fail and fail and fail, and eventually you'll make it, right? The first time you walked, you fell down a lot. The first time you shot a basketball, you missed. The first time you did this, it didn't work. You're going to miss. You're going to fail. Lean into it over and over. Learn the right lessons from those failures, but always, always be trying something. And if you're not failing, you're not learning.
What's next for Avianna?
Over the next few months, I would just watch the website, subscribe to the newsletter, and listen, because I think some of the stuff we're working on is going to end up in the public domain very quickly. And I could not be more excited to be working on the projects I'm working on, both on the scientific side and the commercial side. Again, there's one project in particular that I think is going to be of interest to every robotics company. And I'm very excited to share that as soon as I can.
And for my final question, Vic, what message would you like to leave regarding the future of the drone industry?
What you're doing, it works. It's going to work. It's necessary. The world needs it. And every time the world has needed a technology, it has come into existence. So hold on by your fingertips, by your fingernails, everything else. Hold on, push, innovate, but it will work out. It will, because it has to, because this technology is too important and does too much good for the world to not be allowed to exist forever.
That's it for episode 410 of the Drone Radio Show. I hope you enjoyed hearing from Vic Pellicano of Avianna. I want to thank Vic for taking the time to speak with me. If you want to learn more about Avianna or want to connect with Vic, check out the webpage at avianna.ai. If you like the Drone Radio Show, then please subscribe and share. Write a glowing review on iTunes. And if you're able, donate to keep the podcast going. Go to droneradioshow.com/donate. And thanks for listening. Your support means a lot to me, and I hope you'll listen to more episodes of the Drone Radio Show podcast to hear how others are using drones for business, fun, and research. For the Drone Radio Show, I'm Randy Goers.
This has been the Drone Radio Show podcast. More information on today's show can be found on our website at www.droneradioshow.com. If you're using drone technology for business, fun, or research and would like to share your experience on the show, please visit our website and fill out a guest appearance application. And don't forget to follow us on your favorite social media channels.